Welcome to Palm Life. Celebrate 2 years in business. Welcome to Palm Life. Celebrate 2 years in business. Welcome to Palm Life. Celebrate 2 years in business. Welcome to Palm Life. Celebrate 2 years in business. Welcome to Palm Life. Celebrate 2 years in business.
Good morning. The December 8th special board meeting is now in order. Paul, roll call, please.
Mr. Susan?
Here.
Ms. Wright?
Here.
Ms. Jenkins?
Here.
Ms. Campbell?
Present.
Mr. Trent?
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. What we have is 43 speakers that are eventually going to speak. I wanted to kind of give the crowd kind of the path that we're going to be going on today so that everybody understands. We're going to be breaking the discipline policy into 5 different areas. The first one's going to be why we are here. We'll speak to that. Then we'll take public comment. And then we're going to talk about prior to an incident, what we can be doing. During the incident, what we can do. After the incident, what we can do. And then what the community groups, individuals, parents, and everybody else's roles can be going forward. And then we'll make the suggestions moving forward. So what I'd like to do is the first piece is that I would like to get a motion to allow speakers to speak 3 minutes since we're still under the previous policy and the ability to address the board by name. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, got that. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. All opposed? All right.
Sorry, I guess I'm an aye. We didn't have discussion.
Did you want to discuss the fact that we have 3 minutes in those? There was the speaking policy.
I'm not
Okay,
sure what we're
discipline policy. So we also have 43 speakers, of which
Can I
8
ask a
of them.
clarifying
hang on.
question?
43 speakers, 8 of which are actual on discipline. I would make it to where the others that wish to speak on the other items that are going to be this afternoon possibly, we'll make a motion to have them come at that time. So what I'd like to do now is amend the public speaking so that we can take the discipline people now and take the book review people when it is appropriate to speak to them. That's what the county does. That's what a lot of places do. So if I can get a motion for that motion.
Hold on, I have a question.
Okay, do I have a second? Do I have a second to the motion?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, now we have discussion on the topic.
Yes, now we have discussion on the topic. My question is yes, I understand that when people sign up for public comment, they put what they're speaking to on that list, but my gut says there's probably people who are speaking to more than one thing, and there's no way for you to know which one they want to speak about.
Yes, correct.
There's also a spot that they can speak to that are on there, and it says description of comments, and it says complete agenda item title. So if we're going to allow people to just start saying one thing or another, they have the opportunity to write it down. They have the opportunity to present themselves. And I would,
Mr. Susan, I would argue that people might have just filled out one thing because it satisfied the requirement to speak to the agenda, and they knew the rest of the things they're speaking about are on the agenda, and they may not have written it.
Look, if that's the will of the board, then that's fine. But what I'd like to do is move forward with some expedience towards some of the, if these people all put down that they're going to speak to the book review, then that's fine. So we have a motion and a second.
For discussion.
More discussion? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like us to move from a spirit of confusion to a spirit of clarity. So if we could just, because the idea that people might have to wait, and we have a pretty hefty agenda. So I know we didn't approve the agenda at the meeting. So I think we might even get to some of these things. Hopefully they're in the order that you want to handle them, because I think we might get to this afternoon and say, you know what, we've gone 7 hours. Can we table some of these for later? So hopefully they're in the order that you prioritize, that you wanted to discuss them.
That's what an agenda is.
Okay, but sometimes we change around and we didn't have that opportunity. So the second thing is that if people came to speak to, for example, I don't know if anybody signed up for public comment policy or the book review or the salary payout, because I haven't seen the list, but it would be good for them to be aware they've signed up. They may not get the chance to speak until, for example, after lunch. So I have no idea how you have planned for this morning to go or how long you have designated for it. But I think it's fair to the people who come to speak to realize it might be 4 or 5 hours, go get some breakfast, lunch, whatever, and come back. Or I don't know, I mean, it'd probably be good just for their sakes to know what to expect.
Absolutely. So everybody has the agenda. It's been posted online. We've actually doing the dual notice through the floor to today. We have all of those items are going to be there. I foresee the discipline policy taking till about 11:30. And I would like to reduce that amount of time for our guests by putting forward the discipline speakers. To be honest with you, there's just a lot of people here that would like to speak and would like to get moving on the discipline policy. And if people put down book review, I'd like to give them the appropriate time. Because if you come out now and speak at the book review, then all of a sudden it's a couple hours later, there may have been something that you wanted to speak to. Plus, it allows us to expedite the process, allows us to get moving on what we came here to do and listen to the people. And if they put down book review, then they put down book review. That's it. So thank you.
So you made a statement that you were worried about the time of our guests, and I hear you, but the audience is our guest as well, and you invited them for public comment, and they have a right to say what they want to say.
Absolutely, Ms. Jenkins, and there's no issue that you're saying. You're just saying that if you put down as book review that you're speaking on that you should be able to speak to that. And if you're speaking to the discipline, you should be able to speak to that. If the will of the board is to continue down that line, then that's fine. I have no problem with it. It was just a suggestion for the guests that are here. So we have a vote. Does anybody else have any other discussion on the item? All right, all these in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Ayes. All opposed? Got that? All right, 4-1, the motion passes. So one of the first things that I wanted to do is we're going to separate the individuals from the discipline to the book review. We have those individuals are going to be Benny Jackson, Josephine Hunter, Katie Delaney, Kelly Curvin, Lisa Ray, Hialeah Mercer, Charna Berry. The rest of everybody else will speak to the book review later. The first,
No, wait a minute.
okay, just hang on, just hang on.
I'm speaker number 17.
I'm speaker 38. 13 and 14.
It is, all right. Yeah, that's, yeah. Give me just a second to go through it because they had it written differently on the form. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Anybody who put down discipline will be speaking. We'll go through that. We'll redo the list as we're getting through the why we're here. All right, so everybody that I want you to understand, some individuals came from around the county and around the state. We have a couple of individuals that are here from different school districts. Online, we have nearly about 19 school districts that we're going to call in from various places, all the way from the Panhandle down to Collier over to the East Coast, and we actually have some that are staying here. Ms. Wright, did you want to introduce your school board members that you have here?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have some esteemed individuals in the room today, and I would like to recognize them because they did take time out of their day to come and see what we were doing as far as our discipline. It shows that they are dedicated to their district as well and trying to resolve the issue of discipline within the classroom. So we have a couple individuals from Indian River County. So Dr. Gene Pasco is here, and he is part of their board. And then we also have Miss Jackie Rosario, and she is part of the Indian River County board as well. We also have another individual, but they are on a conference call in the car, but Jesse Thompson from Flagler has come as well. And again, it demonstrates the dedication that we all have to improving our school system. So I'm grateful for them to take time out of their day and come here and be part of this.
Thank you. So now we're going to go around the room with all the individuals that are here and then the board members at the end as to the reason that we feel we're here. Board members, if you don't have anything that you would like to say, that's fine. But I wanted to give our opportunity to our people that are sitting at the table to tell our why. And the first group that I wanted to bring up was Anthony Colucci.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here and participating in this important board meeting. Thank you, Mr. Susan, for holding this meeting. For a long time, the teachers of Brevard County have been asking that these board meetings focus on their most pressing issues. And our most pressing issue right now is school discipline. I appreciate the first question Mr. Susan asked is why we're here. And I want to say why we're here is because teaching can be the best, most rewarding, joyful profession there is. Nothing is more rewarding than watching students learn. Learning can be such a joyful experience for our students. And that's what we're trying to do is return the joy of teaching and learning to our classrooms in Brevard County and make sure that once again, we are the best public school in the state of Florida, public school system. One thing that we're going to be asking is that honest feedback becomes the norm in the school district, not the exception. And it has been the exception in the school district, and it's hurt our school district because we've been afraid to be honest. And we're going to present some honest feedback from teachers. And question has been, what is BFT seeing? What does BFT think about this? What's going on? So what I'm going to present to you are some incidents that have come into our call log this year. Our call log is how our secretary records calls into our office, and we get back to them. So this is going to be the raw information that's given to the BFT officers. Keep in mind, this does not include the hundreds of emails we receive, the members who come into our office, our school visits. These are just the calls that have come in. Incident 1, DPS needs to give more support, losing control of school. Incident 2, getting beat up by students. Incident 3, a student threw a basketball in her face. 6th grade, she had to go to the ER. Incident 4, teacher has a student who won't stop walking out of his classroom. Incident 5, student attacked 3 teachers today. Incident 6, a kid bit her on Friday. The bite mark on her arm is the size of an orange. Incident 7, a student made an action threat, shooting with his finger. Incident 8, violent student in her room. Incident 9, had a student masturbate in his class. It was recorded by another student and then shared in a group chat. Incident 10, teaching an ESE class, 9 students in her class, 5 of them are violent. She took all the desks and chairs out of the room because they're being thrown around the classroom. Went to the doctor today and her blood pressure is through the roof. Had to take a drug test today because a student attacked her. She wants another assistant in her room. She started to cry because it's so horrible in her room. Incident 11, she has 2 students that should not She has 2 students that should not be in the same homeroom. She asked administration to move one of them, but was told it was not possible. Incident 12, aggressive 4th grade student. Incident 13, principal asked him to take some students that have discipline problems in his room. He wants to refuse. Incident 14, walked out, horrible. Incident 15, problems with discipline at her school. Incident 16, violent student. Last week, he threatened to shoot up the school. She is scared. 6th grade, and there was a threat assessment made. Incident 17, she told the student he could do his work, but his attitude is getting in the way. She wrote him up 7 times. 2nd grade, he throws his desk. The SRO had to carry him out. Incident 18, student was in ISS on Monday. On Tuesday, she moved the seat. Still a problem. Called administration to come and get him. Mother emailed accusing her of asking him if he were on drugs. Admin seems to be blaming her. Incident 19, student recorded her admonishing the class for making fun of a student with autism. Incident 20, he confiscated a cell phone from a student. It was not the student's phone. So the other student, upon realizing he had the phone, ran to the front of the room, body checked him into the whiteboard, cutting his hand. When he told her that she assaulted a teacher, she said she didn't give a bleep. Incident 21, possible teacher authority law. Incident 22, kids in her class are out of control. Incident 23, a student threw a tape dispenser and hit her between her eyes. She did an accident report, taking drug tests tomorrow. Incident 24, student has been towed twice. School is on lockdown for over an hour today. Those are the phone calls that are coming into our office. These are the experiences of our teachers and our students in our classroom. When this is going on, we cannot have a joyful profession. We cannot have joyful learning conditions. We need to work together to make sure that this changes. When we have safe schools, safe learning environment, a welcoming learning environment for everyone, our students will achieve more. Our schools will be better. I want to ask, we have some classroom teachers here today, and I'm going to ask them to say a few words. First teacher I'm going to ask to say a few words is Matthew Yount. He is a 5th grade teacher at Imperial Estates Elementary School in Titusville. He is a former Brevard County Teacher of the Year.
Thank you guys for having me here today. Good morning, my name is Matt Yount, and I've been teaching in Brevard County for over 20 years. I currently teach 5th grade to some of the most amazing students in Brevard County at Imperial Estates Elementary in Titusville. I get the honor of working with outstanding teachers, staff, and administrators every day. With that said, I've also watched dozens of my peers and friends leave their classrooms, schools, or the profession entirely. When asked what led them to that decision, there are common themes of increasing demands, non-competitive pay, and general lack of support. Moreover, an almost universal reason is the deterioration of student behavior over the past several years. And before we put the blame squarely on the pandemic, I would postulate that the pandemic was an accelerant to a fire that was already raging. While I would concede that there has always been student misbehavior, the severity and frequency to which disruptive and dangerous behavior is occurring in the classrooms across our county should cause deep concern and immediate action. In many schools, we have egregious behaviors, as Anthony described, that are a very real threat to student and teacher safety. We have students committing assault and battery on teachers, staff, and other students. We have elopement from classrooms, throwing of objects, sexual harassment and misconduct, spitting, biting, destruction of property, drug use, and theft occurring on a daily basis throughout our county. Now, this does not even begin to describe the litany of other behaviors that teachers and staff have to deal with, all the while trying to protect students and teach them the necessary skills for life. While less severe, most teachers have to handle frequent and repeated disrespect and defiance from a small subset of their students. This kind of the constant disruption jeopardizes the learning environment for the rest of the students. Our students have a right to learn in an environment free from danger and continual distraction. We cannot let the actions of the few take our classrooms and school campuses hostile. I want to make sure to keep these problems in context. I believe that the vast majority of our students are eager, respectful learners who look forward to learning new things if provided with the opportunity to do so. However, I also believe that it is paramount that we fight to preserve that spirit by focusing on the two biggest issues when it comes to behavior: severe and/or dangerous behavior and frequent escalating disrespect and conduct from a small portion of our overall student population. To feel supported and valued is all most teachers want. I feel that some ways the school board can support these teachers and their students is: 1, empower our administrators and school resource officers to address criminal behavior on school campuses. 2, establish a well-defined discipline ladder that all stakeholders can understand with clear repercussions for repeated problematic behavior. And 3, form stronger community partnerships with a focus on bringing more mental health resources to our campuses for students, families, and our employees. I will conclude with what I hope is an obvious statement. When our schools are fully staffed with well-qualified people who love working with kids, school discipline and school culture improves. Please continue to keep teacher and staff retention and recruitment efforts at the forefront of our district priorities, as these two issues are inextricably linked. Thank you for your time and consideration on these critical issues.
And thank you, Matt. Now we'll hear from Sandy Edwards. Sandy Edwards is our building representative and a member of our bargaining team from Bayside High School in Palm Bay. She teaches AP, psychology, and sociology.
I'm Sandy Edwards, and I concur with both of everything. Thank you. With everything that's already been said. I have been teaching psychology and sociology at Bayside for 17 years. And I want to thank the board for finally letting us have this conversation. I'm very passionate about it. Every day I drive to school and I tell myself, I drive from Vieira to Bayside, so I have a long time.
Welcome to the mic, please.
Sorry. You think I could talk louder than that? But every day I drive to work and I tell myself, this is going to be a new day. It's going to be a better day. I'm not going to let the kids get me down. And again, it is not all of them. It definitely is a big handful And so when I get to school, I start my day with my first class. I'm smiling, I'm joking. And then by midday, I'm hanging on by a thread. And I know that I'm not the only one in my school who feels that way. As a building rep, I hear stories that would make you want to cry. And in fact, some of us do cry on a daily basis. At times, we have to call someone to come to our room so that we can go have a little mini breakdown in the bathroom. Others will just drop off their keys and their badges at the front office on their way out the door, never to be seen again, which then leaves teachers struggling to cover classes and admin to cover classes. At Bayside, I will say that the violent behaviors that we had at the beginning of last school year have decreased, but the unbelievable disrespect from the students and drug issues, vaping, they've increased. Our concerns at Bayside, I'm not sure if this is where I'm supposed to say this, but we need supportive families when dealing with disciplinary issues. We need more personnel to manage the discipline issues, hall monitors, campus monitors, teachers on assignments. We need more adults. We need support of the district staff and the school board when we're requesting an alternate placement for students who commit expellable offenses. We need effective professional development for teachers on how to manage the behaviors of the children that are from Generation Z, because it is a different time. So much of the disrespect and the discipline issues seem to me to be direct result of cell phone issues. That is really the biggest bane of my existence. Until we as a district get a handle on the cell phones and the earbuds, we're just going to be spinning our wheels in the mud. Our students cannot look away from their phones. They cannot stop texting. The dopamine rush that they're getting from just picking up the phone is greater high than any song and dance I can ever do. And I wear myself out trying to do song and dances. I will stand in front of a student and I will specifically say, you've been told to put your phone away, and they will tell me they need to finish their message. And I stand there watching them finish their message and then set their phone right down where it's going to be available to them. I say, put it away. They put it between their legs, waiting for the next thing that they're going to be able to look at. They don't hear us when we speak to them because they have things in their ears. I'm lucky if someone says good morning to me as they pass me coming into the classroom, because I will say hello and they'll go, I'm sorry, what did you say? And they do that to us in class all day long. Just on a side note, I had mentioned this to a couple of people here. I do teach psychology and sociology. These issues are really part of what we talk about. But the other day, I asked my students in every one of my classes to get a good daily average of how many times they pick up the phone to do anything with it, just pick it up. Ironically enough, they had to use their phone to find out that number. The majority of kids were shocked. I think some pick up their phones 400 plus times a day during a school day. I asked them to imagine that instead of picking up their phones, they were eating a candy bar or smoking a cigarette or taking a hit of cocaine. That to try to make an analogy between every time you pick up your phone, that's what you're doing. Some people would be in a diabetic coma from candy bars 400 times a day. We need help, and I am so grateful that you're doing this and that I'm here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony, for bringing people to the table so that we can hear firsthand from our schools. Next up is going to be Dolores, the president of the 1010 union that includes IAs, bus drivers, and all of our support staff. Ms. Dolores.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy everybody's here. This is something we've needed to work on for a long time. And I believe we all want the same thing. We want our students and our staff to be safe in a safe environment, and we want them to be in a good learning environment. And that can't be done with all the disruptions and the chaos that goes in the classrooms and on the buses. I am here for the support staff today, and I would like to say that our bus drivers, that is an extension of the classrooms. And when the kids get on that bus, they should behave. They should get on there and find their seat, use inside voices. They should never be throwing things or yelling or cursing at the bus driver. And if the way I look at it, if the behavior isn't allowed in the classroom, we don't feel like that it should be allowed on the buses. And we know that there's things going on in the classroom. So we're asking, as we make the corrections and we come together to come up with a great discipline plan for the students in the classrooms, that this also extends to the buses. The driver's classroom is behind them instead of in front of them, like a teacher. And they're driving 50 miles an hour in traffic. Distractions can be deadly. We feel students need to be held accountable for their actions. And a lot of times, and we don't know, we're not blaming anyone, but it seems like that it's with the discipline, it's a hit or a miss, and more it's a miss. The bus drivers fill out their reports and give them to the principals. They never know if anything happened or not, and usually the students back on the bus the next day to do the very same things. I don't know if any of you seen on the news where the one bus driver had pulled over because her students were so out of control. The news media portrayed that lady so badly, and she is a wonderful, wonderful person. She cares about the students, and she was put in a very bad position that day. So she had no other choice than to pull over to try to get some control of the bus, and it just got totally out of hand. If people would see that video footage, they would be so appalled for this lady, how she was talked to, the F-bombs that was thrown at her. She was threatened by the students. She was threatened by other people outside the bus. I could hardly watch it all the way through. It was so stressful for me. So I can't even imagine what it was like for her. And I can't imagine how she does that every day. We really just need to do something to help the bus drivers and the IAs that are in those classrooms with the teachers, because the IAs in the classrooms are being terribly abused. And Alicia will talk about that because she's an IA right in the classroom, and she goes through abuse every day. And it's so sad. I have pictures of some of the things that has happened to her, being choked and scratched, and something has to happen to protect our employees, as well as we work so hard to protect our students. We had a 70-year-old bus driver that a student threw a water bottle and hit him in the back of the head. Now, can you imagine if he would have knocked him out? What could have happened? Well, when they talked to the student, he said he or she, whatever the student was, did not mean to to hit him with the bottle. Why was the student throwing a bottle to start with? Why aren't these students being held accountable? This is the rules. You get on the bus, you sit, you are quiet. When it's your turn to get off the bus, you get up and exit the bus. No fighting, no throwing, no cursing, no being out loud. If you break these rules, there has to be consequences, and they have to be followed. And to me, riding a bus is a privilege. So if they can't obey the rules of the bus, you can't ride the bus for a period of time. Not just a day or 2 days or 3 and back on the bus to do the same thing. It should start at maybe a week, 2. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just throwing out suggestions to the point to where they're suspended from the bus for the remainder of that term. Something has to be done to protect our bus drivers and our IAs in the classroom. Um, Normally, a student gets 1 to 3 suspensions, uh, with 10 being the most. They get suspended, it's a day, it's 2 days. It doesn't work because they know they're going to get back on the bus. Now, when it comes to the ESE classrooms regarding those students, we know there's federal and state laws that are going to need to be changed. We want the students to be safe and in a safe environment, and the employees working with these students need to be safe from abuse at the hands of the student. So we need changes, and we believe this will take lawmakers being involved, working with us to bring about these needed changes. And I think we all believe that. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Elisa. She is a IA in a classroom.
And on the bus.
And on the bus, yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alicia Kelderhouse, and I'm an instructional assistant at Merritt Island High School. This is my 19th year of service. And I work with the most wonderful population, I think, with our students with special needs. And I feel like it was a calling for me, and I love my job. I love working with those students. The last few years, it's been more and more difficult, though, with some of the discipline, some of the behaviors that are coming into the classroom and on the bus, which interrupt the learning environment for other students. There's not enough staff to work with our kids who need small group instruction because we are too busy dealing with discipline problems, having to clear the classroom on an almost daily basis. Some of the IAs that I work with and myself, we have to talk to each other in the morning and motivate each other just to get to work because we know what we're going to face when we get there. On an everyday basis, I'm deflecting, being attacked, scratched, head-butted, pushed, kicked. I've had my hair pulled and been pulled down to the ground. I've had my throat gone for on multiple occasions. And it's on an everyday basis right now. This is not always the norm, because I certainly didn't expect that. And it wasn't like this when I started a long time ago. There was some discipline problems, but it was not this type of severity. I know that there's laws that protect our kids, and I agree that there has to be laws that protect our kids, but I think it needs to protect all of our kids and our employees. We should be able to go to work and feel safe. And our other children who are witnessing every day, they're witnessing myself and other people being attacked. And also, children have been hurt because they get away from you and they go to harm other students, and it has happened, which is very hard for me to deal with because I love all my kids so much and I want to protect them. I want to do the best that I can for them, and it's not a matter of not having the support of administration or anything. They have their hands tied. There are special circumstances, and I understand that. And I understand that it's going to take some time to change the laws or amend things or something that can help so that these kids and employees have a safe environment. And I don't want to be afraid to go to work every day. I know I have students who are afraid every day in the classroom. And it's just not, it's not fair to them. And that's actually what hurts my heart the most, is having the other kids witness things that they shouldn't have to witness. And another thing is, when you work with students that are nonverbal, we're taught crisis prevention and intervention. And the main thing with that is verbal de-escalation. When you have a nonverbal student, how do you use verbal de-escalation? Because you don't get responses, you don't know how much they understand. And it just, there needs to be some sort of help or training. We need more help at a district level, a crisis prevention team or something to help assist us, because there's not enough of us. And people aren't taking the positions. They're trying to hire people, but there's not enough of us to go around to help everyone. And nobody wants to apply for the job because it doesn't pay enough and it's dangerous. So I feel like there needs to be some short-term help while we fight a long-term fight. And any type of even mental health counseling for us, because we're so stressed out. And we take this home to our families. I leave my house at 6 a.m. I get home at 6 p.m. I ride the bus 4 hours a day. And I have these behaviors on the bus as well. I have students that have padded seats because they hit. And it's pretty scary. So I just want to see some changes for that. There's got to be some sort of alternate placement or help, just more support to help us in this situation. I guess that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Kelderhouse. I did to lighten the mood a little bit. Ms. Kelderhouse, I taught her son, and Ms. Kelderhouse was also involved in bringing about a 20-foot teepee to Space Coast?
Diane Lodge.
It's legit an it's a replica, and was one of the greatest things for our students to be able to see. So not only do you lead inside 1010, but you also help out all this instruction and stuff like that. Thank you very much. Ms. Barney, do you have anybody else that wishes to speak?
Yes, Tracy Arzola. She is our co-chair for our local 1010,
Thank
and
you.
also a mother of a student.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tracy Arzola. First off, I'd like to say thank you and good morning. I know we've just discussed issues with bus drivers and instructors today as teachers union has spoken about teachers' issues. But from a parent standpoint, first off, I'd like to start reading off a couple things from policy 5517-01, which is the bullying and harassment policy. Number one, it says the school board is committed to providing an educational setting and workplace that is safe, secure, and free from bullying and harassment from all students and employees. Number two says the board will not tolerate unlawful bullying and harassment of any type. Included in the general section, number 5 states, the superintendent shall develop a comprehensive plan intended to prevent bullying and harassment and to cultivate the school climate so as to appropriately identify, report, investigate, and respond to situations of bullying and harassment as they may occur on school grounds, at school-sponsored events, and through school computer network. Most importantly, implementation of the plan by each principal will be ongoing throughout the school year and will be integrated with the school curriculum, the bullying and prevention program, district disciplinary policies, and violence prevention effort. Also under section C, expected behavior, number 2 states such behavior is essential in maintaining an environment that provides each student the opportunity to obtain a high quality education in a uniform, safe, secure, efficient, and high quality system of education. I'm sorry, this has failed. Not just in school, but on buses. As an example, my son was an elementary student at a BPS school. For his last 2 years, was bullied numerous times. I would receive calls from the nurse's office with him crying, saying he didn't feel well or had a headache. I had to leave work to pick him up and go home and sit with him. Finally, I started to pay a little more attention and wonder what was really wrong. He was never sick like this any other time. So I talked to him and asked him, what's going on? Finally, I got some answers. He was being bullied on the daily. He was being hit by students, name calling, pushed, shoved, just bullied. I even talked to the SRO on campus. She had noticed something was going on, thought it was pretty odd that he was calling all the time to go home. So her being a mother and had students of her own that were bullied, we had a good talk. She told me she was going to go talk to the principal, to ask the principal if she could go to all the 5th grade classes and speak to the children so it wasn't making it look obvious that she was talking about my son. I don't know if that ever happened. I never saw the SRO again after that. I know they do get moved around, but I'm not sure. When I did speak with the principal of the school, I was told that they would investigate it. A couple days had gone by and I didn't hear anything, so I made a call to the school myself. She stated that there would be a letter coming in the mail that they investigated, but nothing was caught on camera. Henceforth, nothing was done. A student who witnessed the incident on more than one occasion even went to the principal and notified the principal of what the student was seeing. To me, that's better than a camera. Cameras don't catch everything. We all know that. A couple days later, I received the letter from the principal, and all it had in there was a school of choice form. So basically, my son was being punished by saying, here, you can switch schools. That'll solve the problem. No, it won't. The bully will just move on to another child, or my child will go to another school and be bullied by someone else. And that's more of an inconvenience for my husband and I, because now we have to find a school for my child to go to. We have to find out how he's going to get back and forth to the school, and he's going to have to meet new students and hope that none of them bully him. There's a problem, and it's not being handled correctly. The effect it had on my son was not fair to him or us. His behavior changed, his grades went down. He wanted to play sick from school more so he wouldn't have to go and deal with it. This is not the kind of environment my son should have to go through, or any other child. I have another parent that I spoke with, had 2 sons at the same school, was being bullied, got nowhere with it. She withdrew them and put them in Brevard virtual while she was on a high-risk pregnancy at home. Then they moved out of state because they were tired. It just wasn't right for them. Something needs to be done. I'm sorry, but for all of us in every single situation, whether you're a teacher, a student, a bus driver, we spent millions on security. We got SROs on site. We spent millions to keep danger out. All we're doing is caging it in. Something needs to be done. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Tracy. Are you good? Ms. Dolores, are you finished?
I just have one more.
Go ahead.
Something that both that they have pointed out is the students that are there to learn. They're good students, they're behaving, they're following the rules, but they can't really learn in the environment they're in because of the disruptions and the chaos, just like the bus video footage that I watched with the lady down there that was had the problems. There was 4 students on that bus that was wonderful. They didn't get involved in the chaos. And at one point, one of the students I watched even try to comfort the bus driver. So, it's not fair to our students that want to learn to have to deal with that. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Ms. Barney. I will say I'm going to refer to that. I've also, so that everybody knows, school board members, I was able to obtain a copy of that yesterday, and now we have a copy of it in security. Just so if you would like to watch that. I think it's an eye-opening experience into exactly what you guys are dealing with. I will say this because we didn't, there was 0 suspensions on that. And the individual, the parent that entered the bus and told kids to get off and even threatened the one kid who didn't want to get off, was not disciplined in any way. So we will take a look at that, and that's some of the things, but it's available to you in security. And many other people, we cannot make that available to the public because of FERPA and other statutory limitations. So thank you very much. The next speaker we have is Mr. Gary Schifrin, president of Bassett.
Good morning. I want to thank Mr. Susan and the school board for allowing BASA to be at the table, to be a part of this discussion. It is with a great honor that I represent all of the administrators in the schools. And as we have awesome teachers, I can tell you we have awesome administrators. What they have gone through over the past 2 years with COVID and the pandemic is nothing less than courageous and creativeness, just to get us through these past 2 years. Having said that, though, we have monthly BASA board meetings, and it is heartbreaking in just about every meeting to listen to the stories of our administrators in regards to what they deal with and how they're being overworked in regards to discipline. And the fact that they're so frustrated because their main job is to ensure the safety of the school and to have instructional learning take place. And yet they're spending more time on discipline issues, and it's just overwhelming. I've talked to a number of administrators that we may lose come Christmas time because they can't do it. And they get better offers out in the business world and with a whole lot less stress than what they're doing here in our schools. And that's a shame. I've been involved with Brevard schools for 50 years, over 50 years. Yes, I cry too. Which again is longer than most of you are alive. But in the 70s, I remember we had civil disobedience, we had protests, we had riots on campuses, and the discussion about discipline was even back during the 70s. The biggest difference, though, back then and back now, is when a student got out of hand and was disruptive, they knew they were going to get consequences at school. But more importantly, they knew when they got home, they were going to get consequences there as well. So since being asked to be at the table, I have reached out to my fellow administrators and have asked them, give me some ideas, even though we hear about it every month, but I wanted to get some specifics in regards to what can we do to maybe make discipline less frustrating. And the first thing, again, I have to go back to it, it starts at the home. Somehow we have to get our parents on our side. Principals tell me that parents yell at them, curse at them, tell them when they disagree with a consequence, I'm going to get my lawyer. That happens all the time. We need to get our parents on our side. Unfortunately, I know many schools have done like workshops, newsletters, meetings with disruptive students. Some work, but many don't. Another, principals are looking for support from the district. Yes, we have a district discipline plan, but principals believe that the school understands the complexity of the situation that warrants the consequences. If two students are involved in a knockdown, drag-out fight, and the principals feel that a 10-day suspension are warranted, then the district should support this. The school should know what is best for their school. Principals should not be targeted because suspension rates are high, especially amongst different demographics. Breaking rules should not be separated by racial groups and included on a monthly report showing the principals how many suspensions there were by subgroups. And then there is that discussion as to why your school has so many more suspensions in one group over another. Principals are made to feel like they shouldn't suspend because of the fear of their evaluation. The vast majority of discipline issues do not make it to the district. Support the schools and applaud their efforts. If a principal and others don't have discipline, then help them or replace them. Another thing, something needs to be done about the ALC experience. If incident is serious enough to have student alert center, it should be more than 2 days in ALC and then 3 days at home, maybe on the computer. There should be a 5-day program addressing behavior modification. It was even suggested that our chronic disruptors should be sent to a Scared Straight program run by law enforcement. I'm glad I got your notice there. If a student is not on pace to graduate at age 19, he said, we didn't diploma. They hang around to cause trouble, deal drugs, be with their boyfriend. And I could go on. But the sheriff, and I'm not going to be one to prevent him from his time. But the bottom line is, as the teachers and as Mr. Colucci has presented, it is very frustrating and very difficult to do the administrators have been trained to do when they're having so many. Here to be a part of the solution, and we hope that you will continue to make us a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Sheriff Ivey, you're next, sir. Well, first of all, thank you for all being here. This is a community effort. This is a community issue, and I appreciate everybody being here. General George Patton once said that if everybody's sitting at the table thinking alike, somebody's not thinking. What I see today is a group of our community, group of individuals involved in our public schools that are all sitting here at the table. And we don't always agree on stuff. Anthony and I have been on different sides of the aisle many times. But what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing is everybody in this room is agreeing that our teachers and our students deserve a safe learning environment to go to school in. Everybody at this table is agreeing to that. We all have different thoughts on how it should happen, but everybody in this room is concerned about the discipline issue. The sheriff's office is not in the discipline business. That's to the school board. Our job is to deal with the criminal elements that happen on our school campuses, the security of our school campuses. But what's happening is those lines are becoming blurred because many of these issues that you've heard about sitting at this table that should have been handled as a criminal issue never got to us. It never got brought to our attention. And if you want to see how that looks, look south to Parkland, because that's what happened in Parkland. They dealt with the issues as administrative issues, or they didn't deal with them at all. And the next thing you know, it's an explosive thing that costs lives. I got brought into this because the very first hint that I got that school discipline wasn't even involved anymore in our education system was when we took over district school security and we started hearing these horror stories. Folks, I'm sat here and I've listened to our teachers, our bus drivers, our ESE IAs. I've listened to our school administrators, and I've watched the faces of each of you that's in the audience. And what I see is shock, disbelief, disappointment, fear for your students, for your children that are going to school. My life was a little bit different. And Mr. Schifrin pointed out that he was a teacher for 50 years. And then he decided to pick on me and say, before many of you were born, which he knows that's not true about me. So, but I can tell you right now, what he said is absolute. I've never ridden a school bus that my mom didn't drive. My mom was a school bus driver. I lived every day of my life in fear. But let me tell you something. My mom demanded that every child on that bus, including her own, rode with respect and safety in mind. And if I got in trouble on the bus, my mom wrote me up and sent me to the dean just like any other kid. And when I got home, my dad dealt with the issue. My mom was the sheriff, the judge, and the executioner in our household. And I'm better for it. Folks, we got to get parents back involved. Many years ago, in fact, I think it was 2014, our agency started a program called It's Time to Be a Parent Again. It was a program designed to re-empower parents, to make them fear more from a knock on the door of one of us telling them their child was in trouble or had been killed than they did from a knock on the door of DCF telling them they were in trouble for disciplining their child. Folks, we got to get parents back involved. We got to get parents standing on the same side of the desk as the teacher, asking the kid, can they explain them grades? Instead of standing on the same side of the desk as the student, telling the teacher they need to explain it. I'm glad to be a part of this. We're all here for the same thing. We all want to find a solution to this. And whatever that solution is, I think the people around this table are the people that are right to come up with the solution. But the solution is simply this. We need to have a solid discipline policy that holds both students that misbehave accountable and administrators and teachers that don't do their job accountable. And we need to enforce that policy. If you're the parent of a kid that wants to go to school in a safe learning environment and get great academics, be part of the arts, be part of the sports programs, the band, whatever it is, we owe that to you to give you that safe learning environment. If you're a teacher or an administrator that passionately goes to work every day, man, my heart goes out to you guys, that passionately goes to work every day and wants to do your job, your prayers have been answered. But if you're the parent of a kid that's that constant disruption, you're the parent of that kid that is disrupting others' opportunities to learn, in my opinion, and this is up to the board, but in my opinion, you better get your kid straight, because if not, they're going to need someplace else to go to school. That's all I got to say. Thank you, Sheriff. We have a couple of the other groups that are here that I'd like to give an opportunity to. First off, I'd love to give the opportunity for the NAACP to speak. Mr. Bernard Bryan, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Susan, and thank you, school board, for allowing me to be here. I'm really excited about the opportunity to express. I went to a Bible study the other day, and the instructor really taught me a lot. He said, when I look at issues, when I look at people, look at them through the eyes of Christ, not through the eyes of an officer, not through the eyes of a teacher, but look at them through the eyes of Christ. And I heard Mr. Anthony plea, and I thank Mrs. Sandy for her information. And I thank the bus drivers as well that you representing. But I'm going to stand for the students right now. I just, there's just a couple of things that I think is important. I'm crying out right now for over 5,000 students that are 2 to 1 grade level behind in reading. I'm crying. I'm crying out for 6,000 students that are behind in math. I would like to see this effort that we're having today that is on those topics that we discussed. I can't tell you how hurt I am. I'm a volunteer. I've been retired now for 11 years. I teach kids STEM. I mentor kids at University Park and Stone. I do a lot voluntarily, and I'm not paid a dime. I do it because I look at kids through the eyes of Christ. This is a complicated problem, and I gotta be honest with you. But what I've learned in my engineering background, you be data-driven. You don't react. You don't react on 18 situation. Okay, I'm just using your numbers. If you look at flight in the school, it's rated number 6 on the Pareto chart. So what you telling the community, sir and ma'am, that I'm going to put all this effort on not the number 1 driver. that is not the number one cause. Okay, and I have the data to support that. So when you deal with a complicated problem, you need to get everybody involved, not just a few people. So I just want to ask this as a rhetorical question. Did you communicate with Mrs. Moore? Did you communicate to Ms. Gleason? Did you communicate to Mrs. Sullivan and Ms. Klein? Did you communicate with the principals? Did you communicate with the parents? Did you communicate with the teachers? Did you communicate with the community? When you deal with difficult problems, you gotta use data. And there are multiple solutions. And I was so hurt the other day, and I almost cried. When I saw the video where Mr. Ivy and some other people stood in front of a jail, sir. I gotta share this story with you, okay? I mentor children. I want you to listen to me very carefully. The impact. I mentor children at University Park. I just got through teaching them science, how to put their science project out. When I was leaving the school, some of the kids that were eating lunch was walking in a single file. You know what the first question they asked me? And this student, sir, was only 6 years old. The first thing she said, "Sir, are you a policeman?" And I said, 6-year-old girl looking at, I didn't have any uniform on. So the perception of damage, what's happening in our community by that video is stunning. Okay, I just want you to understand now, I gotta go back to these schools. I mentor 18 boys, and they all saw the video. So I'm asking this team now, whatever you do, make sure you're data driven. The number one cause of referral is not fight. That's not the number one. I have read your parents' survey. Okay? I've looked at the data. You know what your teachers are saying? I don't talk to the parents. You know what the parents are saying? I don't talk to the teacher. So if you want to attack these tough problems, team, let's do it in a data-driven approach. Not just an emotional approach. So please, and I gotta be honest with you. God prepared me for this day. Watch this now. In March of 2022, I looked at 3 years worth of data, sir. 3 years. What's happening now? Go back in 2020. It was worse. So I would love to have had this meeting in 2020. So I just want to ask Mr. Susan and the board and those who are here in the community, look at our children through the eyes of Christ. Don't segregate them. Don't put them in a position where they feel that they're going to go to prison. Don't do that. Our kids are important. So, I can just talk a lot, but Mr. Bryant is in the community. I work with students. And I want to invite you to come see our STEM kids. You want to see some smart children? They're very smart. And when I mentor kids, I mentor across all ethnic groups. So I just wanted to make sure I leave this in with you. Look at this problem through the eyes of Christ, and look at this problem not as use everybody. The Brevard Public School staff is very, very talented. I've worked with a lot of them, and I respect them all. So that's kind of where my position is, and I hope you feel me today. But like I said, my background is, my last job was quality reliability engineer in the avionics business. And they taught me not to make a decision without data. So that's what I want you to consider today. So I'd like to ask Mr. President, the coming president of the South Brevard NAACP, Mr. Benny.
Thank you, and good morning, and thank you for allowing me to speak to this distinguished board here. Speaking about the video, the caption on the video, Sheriff Ivy declares brand new day for discipline at Brevard schools. So Sheriff Ivy at this meeting said he's not in the discipline business. And you're right, it is a brand new day. And our children are not clowns. They're not snot-nosed. And your threats, your bullying,
Mr. Benny
your
Jack,
scare
Mr.
tactics.
Jackson, I gotta ask you
Let
to,
him-
Mr. Jackson,
He just threatened
hey,
us here.
no, Chairman, Jackson. let him ramble. Okay. Let him ramble.
Let
Mr.
him
Jackson,
do what?
Mr. Jackson.
Look, everyone else was allowed to say their piece.
Let him speak.
I have not said anything that was not in the media.
Yes.
So my question to Sheriff Ivy is, what was the message you were sending?
The message I sent is what put everybody in this room today. The message I
what-
sent
what is
is
it?
that our teachers and our students deserve to have a safe environment in school. So I think the message is very clear. That's why we're all here. Mr. Jackson,
I think different. Here, where sheriff is standing in front of the police station. I used to do a discipline press conference and threatening.
that's a news. That's not, that's it. That's from the news. That's not from me.
I haven't heard any details. And in 2018, when you trained your special force and you bragged about the 176 hours of
Mr.
training
Jackson,
that
I would
they had,
ask you to refer your comments to the discipline policy that we're speaking to today, not an event from 2018.
related to the discipline policy, the 176 hours of special training that the SRs received had a 7 times greater attention to weapons than to mental health. Well,
Yes, ma'am.
I heard we're
Miss
not,
Ma-
we're not
Miss-
mental health counselors. So we spend 48 hours training law enforcement to be in schools, and we teach them 8 hours of mental health.
Mr. Jackson, I would agree with you that one of the biggest issues we have in front of us is the mental health of our students and our staff. That's been addressed, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Mr. Bryan, do you have somebody else you'd like to speak? Thank you.
Hello, my name is LaTadra Fuller. I'm pastor of Arise International Ministries. I also work with the community, and I also work with students and mentoring. I want to approach it this way. I believe we've all walked outside and noticed the wind, as we would say. It's a windy day today. The reality of that is that we have never seen wind. We've only seen the result of the wind. And I believe when we approach situations from the result and not from the root, we make situations worse. We make problems worse. We make issues worse. And I also say this, there's a little passage in the Bible that talks about Isaac and how he was trying to dig from his father's well. And each time he tried, he was interfered. They basically blocked him, right? But it wasn't until Isaac made the decision to dig new wells that they left him alone. I want to challenge this board to drill new wells. Let's not go back to our father wells. Let's dig new wells. And what do I mean? It's time to dig new wells in the sense of bring our parents back into the meeting rooms. Bring our community leaders back into the meeting rooms. It cannot just be a specific panel, okay? I talk with teachers. I've seen what teachers gone through. I have siblings that have driven the buses. I've seen what they're going through. But I believe the biggest issue, and I heard our principal say this, is that we have to get parents back on the same page. We have to get community leaders back on the same page. When we eliminate our parents, when we eliminate our community leaders, even when we eliminate our teachers and our principals and the support staff, you cannot resolve or solve an issue. When we look at the numbers, which is dreaded, we just talked about it. We look at the numbers, we'll see if parents are back involved in just learning experience, we can now do something about the discipline. But if you're going to continue to make rules on discipline outside of those that carried their children, outside of those that seated their children, outside of the community that helped those parents, when those parents need food, the community leaders are there. When those parents need a place to stay, the community leaders are there. If you're going to continue to hit a problem and target a problem, and the parents aren't in that room, I have no idea what your solutions are. And I'm a parent. I wasn't in the room. I have no idea what your solutions are. And I'm a pastor in the community. I have no idea what your solutions are. And I work with children. I work with parents. You cannot resolve it until you bring us back in your meetings, not these meetings, but the meetings behind the doors that dictate and determine what's going on. I'm saying it's time to dig new wells, and we need to do this together.
Ms. Fuller, I couldn't think of a better statement than what you just said right now. I think everybody that's inside this crowd right now agrees with you that the parents need to be one of the biggest parts. I think everybody in here would agree. There's not a single individual. Thank you so much for saying that. You hit it right on the head. The parents need to be involved and they need to be taken, to be a part of it. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I was going to give Mr. Rainey an opportunity. This is an individual that's been coming now for over a year, representing a lot of the IAs and bus drivers. He works very closely with many of them. He is not part of the 1010 union, but because of his efforts in this area, I wanted to give him an opportunity to speak today. Thank you, Mr. Rainey. You have the floor.
Thank you. I do appreciate your comments. They're wonderful. I'm going to back up just a minute. I'm a retired healthcare executive who looked to give back to the community and found a need that the community had, which was driving a bus, right? And it's something that I had a skill set for and said, okay, I can get in and help. After doing that for the first year, and I'm in my second year of doing this, after doing that in the first year and talking to a lot of the drivers that are not in the union, but we are very tied to and support Dolores's efforts and the union's efforts. I came to this board almost a year ago and said there are two reasons that you don't have bus drivers. One of them was hiring, right? The other one was retention. Okay, your hiring is got a limiting factor on the basis of your salary, your input salary. You tried to address it. You've gotten some results on that, and that's not what I'm here for. The other was the retention of drivers. I'm one of those that decided to come back in a second year. I'll tell you about that in just a second. But the retention of drivers, the number one reason that we don't want to come back is discipline. We can find another job someplace else without the hassle because we're not trained in the things that you're talking about. We're trained in the safe delivery of your students driving a 33,000 to 40,000 pound box on the road with students in it. And yes, one of the training techniques that we're trained in the county training is pull over if you can't handle, if the bus is unruly. So that's gonna create a problem. That's gonna create problems for you. The drivers, unfortunately, there's two periods where they take a look and say, I'm not coming back. There's one after the Christmas break, and I pray that we don't lose a slew of drivers at the Christmas break. The other one is at the school break at the end of the year and going between the two years. We had meetings with you, Mr. Sousa, over a year ago. And along the way, we have been sending you information, and you've opened up an avenue for us to do that with, to share that information with. We had many drivers. Was there, other people were there, supervisors were there, and we talked about this. And the number one issue that came out of that was stop the bleeding of our drivers leaving by addressing the discipline problem. And so I think this is a result of some of that. I mean, it takes a while to get all the people involved, and I'm glad to see the number of people that have come together to put this together. Today, fights are still an issue on our buses. Okay, 3 to 4 fights a week for our supervisors. You got to address that for us. Okay, when they're fighting, I can't drive the bus. Right? It's a distraction. Anything that causes a distraction causes a safety issue on the bus. And that's the number one thing. If we crash that bus with 40, 50, 60 kids on it, we got a bigger problem. Okay? Watching the kids, I don't know if you know the detail that goes into that. You count those kids when they go off the bus. You count them when they come on the bus. You count them as they cross the street. You look at the cars on the left and on the right. The cars passing you when the flashing reds are out. Common problem in this county. Big common problem. You know, I get a car past my reds every week, 2 to 3 times a week. Scares me to death because one of those kids is going to get killed. Okay? And I don't want that to happen. So I'm always trying to make my deliveries, even if I have to do a double loop to get the passenger door on the side of the route where the kids don't have to cross the street. And the school board and the school transportation department under Mr. Miller and the rest do a tremendous job of trying to make that happen. But here's the problem. We had 88 routes. We had 52 bus drivers. What do? Okay, so when I first came on, they said, hey, we got a job for you. You can have a job. There are so many routes open, you can pick your job. Well, I came on, and the only way to get all the kids to school was to consolidate the unfilled routes into the buses that were left. So we went from 30 minutes with 20 to 30 kids on a route to maybe 45 or 50 minutes. Then we enter this school year and more retention issues and no hiring, of course. The ones that hired, you have some automatic, you have some that drop off. And now you squeeze those routes down to where I'm personally driving an hour and 15 minutes in the morning, starting at, my day starts at 4 o'clock. With all my safety checks and everything to get there. But my route starts at 6:15, depending on how many ESE kids I have on the bus. And I don't get to the first school till 7:30. I got little pre-Ks sitting in a car seat in the dark, driving with me all over the county so that I can pick up all the kids that I've got. We've got drivers now that have bus loads of 60, 70 elementary kids on a bus, 3 to a seat, crammed as far as you can get. We don't have any other choice but to double back. If we can't fit them on the bus, you can't fit that many high school kids on a bus. So I personally have driven the route that was mentioned here as a sub for a week after the driver had some issues, and I drove that bus and I refused to drive that route. Okay, it's not safe for me. Kid stands over top of you in the seat, and you get 2 or 3 kids standing on top of you saying, you can't do anything to me, you can't touch me, you can't take my cell phone, and I don't have to get off this bus. Well, you know what? He's right. They're right. I can't touch them. I don't want to touch them. I can't touch them. I don't take their cell phones. And you know what? I can't, it's not my job to kick them off the bus. I can refer them off the bus. I can ask you to never, don't let them ride the bus again. But the safety issue, the threatening issue to the driver is pretty bad. So when you look at this, you have threats Okay. He did get hit in the head with a bottle of water. That's uncalled for. But that's not the only one. You have coins, money, markers, pencils, all being thrown at the bus driver. hitting the window, coming back and hitting them in the face. Every one of those is a scary distraction that you could cause the bus to wreck. Okay. You have kids dancing on the bus this week. High school students rip their shirts off, doing a nice jig in the back with the ladies and the guys taking cell phone videos and sending it out. Okay. What do you do with that kind of a drive? That is totally unsafe, right? You have kids that won't stay in their seat. They got their friends and they want to talk to their friends and they jump from one side to the other. So, those are distractions. And then you have disrespect. I've been called every name under the sun. I've been spit on. Spit in the face. Not a fun. As a driver, you go, why do I want to do this? I'm a retired executive. Why do I want to do this? I'm trying to help the community, and this is what I have to live through. So let's talk about another issue that's on the bus. The damage to the bus. All right. I can't tell you how many food fights come on the bus. And I'm not talking about little stuff. I'm talking about yogurt and pudding spread all over the windows and all over the seats, thrown in a food fight. Not just once, happens a lot, right? Trash on the bus that takes 30 to 40 minutes to clean up. When are you going to do it? You can't run the next route and have the kids have the next set of students sitting in pudding. You got to clean it up. Causes delays. Then the kids are not getting to the school. We've got kids that don't get to school for 45 minutes to an hour because we're either having to clean the bus or we're doing double backs. Double backs mean I don't have enough room in my bus to carry you. So I leave you, go do that route, take them to school, come back and pick the rest of the route up. Well, those kids don't even get to school until, 9:15 for the high schools. They're missing their first periods. The bell rings at 8:30. Those issues have caused a problem. And I leave you with a couple of things. Long routes and overcrowding create discipline. Okay? You add to that heat from non-air conditioned buses or buses where the air conditioners are broken, and you got yourself a stewed up mess going to create a problem. So there's an issue that I don't know how to fix, okay? But I'm bringing it to your attention because that's what the drivers asked me to do. That's what Dolores and her team has done. And you can fix these overcrowding issues. The other one is you have an antiquated cell phone policy on the bus. Number 9 on the rules written right on the bus says no cell phones on the bus. But yet we turn around and say you got to have an ID to get on the bus. If you don't have an ID, take a picture of it, download it to your phone, and use your phone to get on the bus. So the phones are on the bus. Now, I personally don't let phones out, on elementaries. There's no reason for the elementary kids to have the phones out, right? The high schoolers, you got to pick and choose your fights. Middle schools and high schools, I just tell them, look, it's a distraction. If I hear it or see it, it's a distraction. Please, if you're going to do it, put earpods in and get down low. That doesn't solve what's going on in the classroom, though, okay? But you do have an antiquated policy on the bus. And picking and choosing to say, I'm going to take somebody's cell phone on the bus and I become a cell phone monitor while I'm trying to drive a 40,000-pound bus with kids on it, that's not a fight I'm willing to have. Again, you have not just me that won't drive certain routes in certain schools. You have a lot of our drivers will not drive certain routes in certain schools. I can name the schools for you, but I won't.
Don't do that.
I won't name them. Okay. But until you resolve that issue, and it's not that I won't drive that route. I'll drive that route if you put an administrator on it to handle the kids while I'm driving, or an RSO officer on it, somebody with authority, right? My IAs are great. The ones that I have for my ESC students, they're fantastic. Okay, they can't handle the other 35 or 40 kids on the bus, right? So, I leave you with long routes and damage to the bus that comes from overcrowding. We have ripped seats, poked seats, cut seat belts, damaged glass, and then all the cleaning on the bus, roaches on the bus because of the food on the bus. So then you got to go and have it defogged. Okay. So these are real legit issues that you can resolve if you can kind of thin it. I think if you thin it down and shorten up the routes, the routes are just they're just really long. And that goes back to, we can't hire, but we're trying to address it. We can't keep them retained because we got a discipline issue. I'll leave you with that, and I thank you for your time. Thank you, Dolores, for all your support and all the 1010 support and the IAs. The IAs are critical for us.
Thank you, Mr. Rainey. I really appreciate. Next up is going to be Samantha Nazario from the Cultural Community Connection. Ms. Nazario.
Good morning. Good morning. I'd like to thank everyone that's here today for coming to this table and having this discussion. Is it on?
We need it to be live streamed.
Okay, there we go. Is that better? Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be at this table and be a part of this discussion and be able to have other community members that sit here with me to bring the concerns of our community forward and to actually be a part of the process versus just sitting back and watching it at home on TV. This is a very different role for me. My son is not in BPS anymore, but it is my responsibility as a community leader and advocate to be here and represent my community issues. My main thing is, and I've said this to many people sitting here, so a few of you are going to, we're failing our children. We're failing our children. We're failing our educators. COVID lit the fire, like Matt said, that has been a part of BPS for a very long time. Bullying has been an issue in Brevard County since my kid was in elementary school. Under the amazing leadership of Ms. Moore at Harbor City, a lot of that was changed, and a new wave came when she came into Harbor City because she actually addressed it. She made the children and the parents sit down and address the issue. There has to be parental responsibility as well as student responsibility. What I find in my community is a lot of the time, I'm the only Spanish person in the room. I can't speak for everybody. I need parents to become engaged. I implore Hispanic parents to become engaged, immigrant parents to become engaged without fear. I implore our Caribbean, African-American parents to become engaged. So many times over the 10 years that I volunteered at BPS with over 20,000 hours, I was the only Spanish person in the room. That has to change. They have to feel as if they are welcome in the community and they can engage without fear of repercussion on their family or their finances or their job. So as I sit here and say we're failing our children, we're also failing our educators. Because you know what? They have to work in a safe environment. And without the administrators and the educators that I had the pleasure of having during my son's experience at BPS, I'd be sitting here telling you a very different story. But you know what? Those principals, Ms. Moore, Ms. Vega, Dr. Kirk, they never gave up on my son. They always made sure that if I was there, I counted. So you know what? If you want to count at your kid's school, be present. You can't come in the door and want to complain when there's an issue. Be present. You have an IEP meeting, those 7 teachers took their time from their day to be present. Be present. We all know that in Brevard County, we are struggling with an enormous mental health crisis in our adults, in our administrators, in our personal lives. We need help with mental health issues in Brevard County. We need behavioral therapy. We need behavioral intervention. We need more hands-on with our nonverbal autistic children. Our ESC kids have exceptions and particular outlined rules because they need to work better that way. A lot of our children do not understand the consequences of their actions, especially our children on the spectrum. Again, more parental involvement. I'm going to say it because you know what? I worked 3 jobs in Brevard County raising my kid, and I was still in that school every week, at least 20 hours a week. Okay, excuses are not acceptable anymore. These are your children. It is your responsibility to teach them how to respect the people that spend 90% of their day with them. They are at school more than they are at home. Okay, we need to bridge the gap of our technology issue, our internet issue with our impoverished areas. If a parent does not have access to the internet or a laptop, it should not be an affordability issue. BPS should be able to provide, okay, you don't have a laptop? Here you go, mom, so you can communicate with Launchpad. Or here you go, dad, let's make a deal with Spectrum. New York City Housing did it. They made a deal with Verizon. They brought the internet in, and it's free. Let's make a deal with Spectrum. They monopolize the internet around here, and they don't service our community properly. Immigrants cannot get internet. They don't have a social security number. So we have multiple issues in our community that need to be addressed, and they're all going to streamline back to this discipline policy that we're sitting here for today. There are many different levels and branches that come off of this tree that are relating to this issue. Poverty, hunger, mental illness, lack of language. We service 60 languages in Brevard Public Schools, but we don't have a representative for all 60 of those languages in our school. That's a problem. That's a huge communication problem. And I want our community to feel safe, especially my immigrant community. I understand that we're a non-sanctuary county and that may put fear into them, but you know what? Find someone, reach out to me. My number is everywhere. Ask Mr. Susan for it, ask anyone on the council, on the school board. I will help. I will speak for you. That is what we are here for. Organizations like myself and Makaska and other organizations that have fought this fight long and hard in Brevard County. What I want to see is a colorblind policy that treats every child the same. I am sick and tired of filtering calls from my parents and myself that have dealt with issues in BPS where I felt like my issue was not addressed properly or it was gone to an extreme. We need cultural sensitivity in Brevard County, okay? I think this is the stillest my hands have ever been for most of the people in this room. My hands are usually all over the place. I'm Puerto Rican, I'm Italian, I talk with my hands, I'm from New York. We're very animated, okay? I have a saying that says, if my hands are not going, then you really need to be worried. So when I say that, I feel like teachers also need to understand that cultures express themselves differently. And maybe if we have to sit down and present that workshop to teachers, I'm totally down. I'm sure that kid would sit there with me. I would like to address that. If my kid is speaking with his hands, he's frustrated. He's trying to express what's going on, what's wrong. He's not gonna attack you. He's not aggressive. He's not a danger to you. You're not understanding what he's trying to say. So in his frustration, his hands may, we've had this issue even on the college level. And it is a cultural thing. Sadly enough, we speak with our hands. I will not apologize for that. I come from a place where I walked out my door every day in the South Bronx, and just to make it get home at 3 o'clock, I survived that day. Okay, I came to Brevard County. Why? I wanted a quality education for my son. I wanted a good place for him to grow up. I did not expect my son to have to defend his Puerto Rican heritage, educate other children, and explain that we are not immigrants, we are Americans born in the South Bronx. Okay, I've seen this happen many times over. So what I want is for us to let's educate our educators so that they can do their job properly. My last request before I'm done is I would like at some point, once we rip apart this policy and get to the nitty-gritty here, I would like to see an oversight committee as far as the disciplinary policy for review every 30 to 60 days with different community members on that. Thank you.
Ms. Kay, were you going to say something?
Well, I just, again, Kim Raj representing Bakaska, Brevard Caribbean American Sports and Cultural Association. And Ms. Amanda echoed everything in detail as what we love to say, because it is a real issue. When we dissect this policy here, I want to make sure, you said it, colorblind. It's very important to understand that discipline doesn't take shape in race, or creed or anything. It is about the child. It is about creating a safe environment for all involved, our administrators, our bus drivers, the students. And so as someone from the Caribbean, cultural differences are keen to understand, and not everybody will understand why the Jamaican person would behave that way. So it's critical to have that training. We have to include that in our policies. We ought to make sure, why are we here? Are we here just to create a prison, school to prison pipeline? Or are we really here to make sure that our children understand that they are consequences not just to fear to go to prison, but their consequences to their action, and we are training them to be better citizens of Brevard. And so that's our message. Equitable distribution of disciplinary policies. Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity to be at the table, and we're ready to get working to make sure that BPS is the best in the country. And I know we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Now have an opportunity for our school board members to say a couple of comments, just so everybody knows we're kind of running. So what I'm going to do is wait for after the school board members to make their comments. Then what I would like to do is take a break, come back, and we're going to go to the discipline policies, public comment. After reviewing all of the pieces, just so you guys know, when I received the list, it has which one of the items they have on there. So we determined it based on that. But based on some of the conversations that people in the group have said that they had also put that other stuff, we went through each one of those forms and we identified that there are more people. So all of those people will be an opportunity to speak. And if you did not put down one, I'm going to call your name and say, hey, did you mean to speak here or no? And go through a couple of that. But I wanted to give our school board members an opportunity to speak. I think I'll just go to Ms. Jenkins first.
Thank you. I'm going to be a little bit, because I have some different pieces that I'm going to cover here. So first, Mr. Bryan, I appreciate you. You know that. I appreciate you for addressing the elephant in the room, the video with our chairman and Mr. Ivy. And before we get defensive and we say things like, we don't know what was going to be said during that video, I argue the video was wrong and inappropriate before any words came out of anybody's mouth. This community deserves a response to it. They've been asking for a response to it, and they haven't gotten one. And when someone asked you just yesterday about it, your response was, you don't control Mr. Ivy. Well, perhaps we should review our contract with the Brevard County Sheriff's Office, because so far as I remember, we don't work for him. And what you can control is what you do and what you say. And I haven't heard you publicly denounce the statements that were made in that video. And Mr. Ivy, you said here today that the lines are getting blurred, and they sure are. They sure are. And so I say to our community, I am sorry. I'm sorry because nobody at BPS was aware of that video. No cabinet member, not our chief operating officer, not our communications team, not any other school board member. And from what I gathered, the only people who knew about it were standing in the video and the leadership of BFT. And why it needs to be addressed right here in this meeting is because that video hurt our community. And I cannot for the life of me find one single benefit of participating in that video. No new ideas, no new plan, just name calling, threats, intimidation, and attention-seeking behaviors. And I'm not talking about the behaviors you talked about. I'm talking about the behaviors of the adults standing in that video. Our community is concerned, and rightfully so, because when they heard their children labeled clowns, they heard you talking about their Black kids. And when they heard their children labeled snots, they heard you talking about children with disabilities. And when they heard that you were going to be their biggest nightmare, they heard a threat to their children. No solutions, no new ideas, no new plans. Just a bunch of statements repeated about teachers and administrators being handcuffed, having their hands tied, and no one can articulate to me what that means. Well, I'm going to tell you what I think they mean by that. It means that the law is meant to protect students based on race, and the law is meant to protect students with disabilities are the reason we have negative behaviors in our schools. We think we don't discipline Black students and students with disabilities enough. That's what I think you mean. And if you think I'm wrong, then listen to this. I have a fellow board member here who just recently, yes, it's in video footage, made this statement about our discipline policy. When you take a look at our discipline policy, when it was first implemented, it sounded really good on paper. That's when we had control at the local level in our schools. Where it got out of hand is when we started talking about discipline and race together. That's when it handcuffed our schools and we lost control of our schools with discipline. No new plan, no new idea. And when asked by concerned members of the community if you reviewed data before you had that video, your answer answer was no. If when you were asked by concerned citizens of this community, if you reviewed the discipline plan at all, the strategic plan, the entire policy, the answer was no. We are an educational institution. We make decisions based on data. So I brought some. Hold on to your cheeks, Mr. Ivy. This data was compiled not only by the numbers given to these community members here at Brevard Public Schools, but by the NAACP and by Mr. Bryan. Everyone at this table has a packet that I provided for you. I had a couple extra that I passed out into the audience. You want it? I'll give it to you. Trust me. It's interesting that we invited people from other counties here to have this conversation with us, because the first question I asked was, where do we rank among the state? We are the 10th largest school district in the state of Florida, and guess what? We have the 10th largest number of incidences. That makes sense. We are no different than anybody else. But here's where we are. 10th largest in the state, we are number 1 in expulsions, number 1 in ALC placements, and number 4 in suspensions. So the narrative that we are not disciplining our children doesn't make any sense, because the data doesn't say that. Mr. Bryan had made a statement that he had gathered 3 years of information and data, and that's what I'm speaking to right here. This is what Mr. Bryan put together for us. And it's kind of hard to have this conversation when you're not looking at it, so I'm going to do my best for the people who are listening at home and people in this room who don't have it in front of them. But when we look at our discipline totals and we look at the subgroups, yes, we look at the subgroups because it's important. Because here's why. This pattern happened for the past 3 years, and I guarantee if we looked backwards, it would have continued back then. They are carbon copies of each other. Our Black students represent 15% of our population. They represent 34% of our discipline referrals. Mr. Bryan said, when you make smart decisions and you tackle challenges, very complex challenges, you look at the top issues. The top issues are willful disobedience, out of area, and classroom disruptions. That's not what I heard in the video. And when you break every single one of those down by subgroup, you see a very obvious trend. Our Black students aren't doing them more than anyone else. And why this matters is if we're going to have an honest conversation about discipline and behavior in our schools, we're going to have to talk about all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's fast forward. 15% of the population is Black in our students. They represent 34% of our referrals. In every single one of those categories, they're doing it less than any other peer and race. They represent 45% of our alternative learning center placements. Does that make any sense to anybody? No. Let's move on to our students with disabilities. They make up 17% of the population of Brevard Public Schools, and yet they make up 31% of our referrals. And those Black students I talked about in our ALC, 25% of them are also students with disabilities. So what does that tell us? Why is that important? Because we're disproportionately disciplining students of color and with disabilities. So there is zero evidence to support the claims that the federal laws meant to protect those students are handcuffing our staff or their hands are tied. And quite frankly, we're not even respecting those laws. Why that matters is because that already tells us the majority of the conversation we had in that video and some of the conversation we had today is not valid. And if you're not working off of real information and data and facts, how are you going to solve the problem? Now I'm going to sidestep a little bit. Before I was elected to this position, I worked for Brevard Public Schools for 6 years as a speech language pathologist. I worked with all of our ESE department. This is not the number one referral, but it's important, and we've heard about it here today. So let's talk honestly about our teachers who are being physically attacked in classrooms. Because it's happening. We know it's happening. No one's saying it isn't. But the data tells us that the majority of these physical behaviors towards our staff are within our ESE classrooms. And it's not because our ESE students are bad kids. If you say you care about our students getting physical with our staff, we need to be real and honest about what's actually happening. The educational environment we provide some of our ESE students directly contributes to their increased frustration levels, difficulty with self-regulation, too much stimuli, and ultimately increasing negative behaviors. This is a reality. And it's not the fault of our teachers. Our ESE teachers are patient, passionate, loving professionals. They give everything to their students. And quite frankly, it's not the fault of BPS. This is a huge issue. It's not a simple solution. It's the result of a statewide model and funding structure. And I don't have the answer to it. I don't know how we fix it. But at a minimum, if we're going to talk about discipline and behaviors, and we're going to highlight one that's incredibly important to our staff, then we at least have to acknowledge the why before we pretend to fix it. So to people who are listening and don't really understand why I'm saying that, when a student is struggling, a team meets and does an assessment for that student. We document their abilities, where they are currently, the goals that we want them to achieve within the year, sometimes objectives and benchmarks along the way, the services that we as an education institution can provide to them in order to reach those goals. So exceptional student education, sometimes there'll be therapists involved, both physical, communication. We take the time to identify the least restrictive environment for that student. And what that means is we decide what setting that student can function their best in, with the least amount of time removed from their general education peers. Then we draft an individualized education plan, an IEP. And when our students are recommended a self-contained classroom setting, they suddenly find themselves in an environment that is contradictory to the term individualized. They're among 15 other individualized education plans in an elementary school. Sometimes they are in multi-grade levels, kindergarten through third grade in one class, fourth through sixth grade in another, among varying exceptionalities and needs. We've got one teacher, 15 individualized needs, multi-grade level curriculums, often new students coming in and out as they're identified throughout the year. And if they're lucky, they have an instructional assistant position staffed to support them. We expect our ESE students we expect our ESE teachers to manage these settings with limited resources and limited staffing. And we expect our most vulnerable students who may be struggling not only academically, but socially, emotionally, physically, with communication deficits, to thrive in these challenging settings. We need to acknowledge reality. And we have to take action and address it not only for our staff's well-being, for every student in those classrooms to have a safe learning environment. And it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be quick. So I ask again, where are these instances happening most often? And when we look at it by grade level, there's an incredible spike when we hit 7th grade. No shock to anyone who has a middle schooler, right? It's reflective of their childhood development. It makes sense. And that's why, as an organization, we are focusing on reimagining middle schools, because we know it's a problem and we want to do something differently. And so I say, if we can do that there, then we need to start having a conversation about reimagining the way we focus on our ESE classrooms and the way we service our ESE students. So next part is where I'm frustrated. You know, there was a lot said today that gives this impression that students are doing these terrible things and it's not being addressed. I got data that says to me, and I believe that this is year to date. I'm not positive of that. Let's see, data pulled. Yes. So I'm assuming this is from our school year, this data right here. Okay, just so the beginning of this school year to now. Okay. There have been 26,132 incidents reported. And then we have data about the actions taken towards those. 32,270. So we have like 6,000 responses to referrals. And I can't literally break this down on paper, but it tells me, I think I can safely assume that when those kids are referred, we had some kind of consequence put in place, because it doesn't make any sense. We have more consequences than we have referrals, because sometimes we have students who do something and they get more than one referral and more than one consequence. But I say this to our teachers listening. I hear you when you come to me. I argue the number one frustration is that teachers feel like they aren't supported. They feel like when they write a referral, it isn't followed through with. And I'm not saying that you're wrong or you're lying. What I'm asking you, and I really think the purpose of this meeting is to acknowledge that's the number one frustration. So let's do something about it. Let's let our teachers know, because I'm an educator. Yes, I know of our rights. To be honest and to put in writing and to tell someone to help them. I want you to hear me, and I think all of us should say it, because that's really the purpose of this meeting today. Put it in writing. Tell us. I hear you, I believe you, but when you come to me and you say, I had this incident in my classroom and my teacher or my administrator didn't respond to it, we can't do anything from the district level with that. You're not giving me a specific incident, a specific student, a specific action to address with the staff here to then go address with the staff at your school. You have permission to do that. Please do it, because it's not going to get better if you don't. And the scariest part about this, because it is the number one frustration for classroom teachers, is that they also say in the same breath, because they don't help me and I don't feel supported, whether or not in their specific scenario it's true or not, they feel that way, they no longer write referrals. Well, that doesn't help either. That's not going to fix the problem either. And so if we're going to make a change and we're going to be honest about what's happening, you have to document it. You have to tell us about it. No one's going to retaliate against you. You can call me if you think they did, because if you don't think I'm going to not defend you, I don't think you've been paying attention. Please, let's have an honest conversation today. Number one frustration for teachers, feeling like they're not supported. Let's fix it. Number one, physical altercation. Unhealthy ESE environments for our students and our staff. It hurts to say it, but it's true. And stop blaming the laws and the handcuffing, because it's not true. It hurts our community. It hurts our community.
Ms. Campbell?
All right. So I'm gonna share just from some thoughts that were highlighted to me as I was listening to everybody around this, whatever we are, you. But before I do that, I do want to, you may have been able to tell a little frustration in my voice at the beginning of the meeting, and I want to share why I was frustrated, and I'm going to share why I'm glad we're doing this. My frustration is because we had on the agenda, we're going to talk about the discipline plan, but there were no specifics. There was nothing else posted on the agenda. There was nothing. Hang on. Listen, just stop if you would, please. I I think when we have these, however many you said, 30-something people come up, I think we're going to have people come up and talk about their concerns about corporal punishment, because the perception, warranted or unwarranted, is going out there. I mean, I got the phone call from NBC News, national news last week, wanting to know, were we doing corporal punishment? Was it legal? I'm like, I watched the press conference. That's not what he said. But the perception is that we're about to reinstitute corporal punishment. I didn't hear that. So if that's why you came to speak, please keep your comments short so we can get through this, because I don't think that's what we're doing. I think we've got people who are here to address other things that we're not talking. So I will. But my frustration was we didn't know. We didn't know. I think you knew, but we didn't know, and the public didn't know on the agenda what exactly were we talking about. And so people just had to make assumptions. And when people make assumptions, they usually make the worst assumptions. And it's based on their political background. And I hate that. If you know me well enough, you know I hate getting into the politics of everything. But that's where we are. This is the world that we live in, and everybody drew sides. We heard the sides drawn today, and thank you, gentlemen, for being respectful of one another. But we heard as well as you could. Maybe, I don't know, whatever. We can move on to the next thing. But we can have this discussion without having to draw sides. But we drew sides because we didn't know. So that's my frustration. The positive thing, and the reason why I'm glad we're having this conversation, is because some of the things that were brought out today, we actually already have some things in place, and we have those conversations as a board all the time. We have had workshops on discipline. We have had workshops on behavior plans. We have, it has been presented to the board, the resources that we have for our teachers, for our families. But you know what, a lot of times, because people aren't paying attention. Well, you bet the world is paying attention today. So thank you for creating this opportunity, because I want now in this arena that everybody's paying attention, for people to see, yes, what the issues are, but also what we already have in place that maybe they weren't aware of, that maybe now they'll get more involved and they'll more participate. And I'm going to mention some things like, thank you for bringing more mental health resources. Mr. Young, I think you said that, for our teachers. We have, and I'm going to say it publicly because I know the teachers are going to be watching this. We have, through our, what's the EAP, Employee Assistance Program, we have free, as many as you need, phone-based and a certain number of in-person mental health counseling for all of our employees. We have that. I don't know what the participation level is, but it's not high enough. We have now, through our marathon health clinics, which are available to everyone on the health plan, which is about 6,000-ish of our 9,000 employees. We have mental health resources at, Dr. Fetty, at every clinic, correct?
At the central area clinic, and it moves.
Right. So we have the resources available for everybody who's on the health plan. I want all of our employees to hear me clearly say, we have mental health resources available for you today. And aside, if you're on the insurance program, you have through Cigna. We take advantage of those because we do not want you to be without resources when they're there at your fingertips. We have some training. I'm going to shift here to some of the things that I've heard, other things that I've heard. We talked about fully staffed. You know what? It would be great if we were fully staffed. That would help. And you know what? When people said that, we need more bus drivers, we need more IAs, my heart breaks and I just want to cry, because we're trying so hard and I can't make people come take these jobs. And you know what? My great frustration, and I'm sorry, my frustration, I've got frustrations about lots of things. They're not necessarily aimed at any one person in particular right now, is that we had people, and bless you, county, for approving the millage, but we had people when we were trying to fight that battle, when we were trying to say, look, we can't get people hired, we need to be able to pay them more, and they were fighting with every last breath for us to not get the millage passed. But that is the thing that's going to enable us, hopefully, and I'm not that's not going to solve all our problems, but it will help. It will help with the recruitment. It will help with the retention. Please see the head nods of our union representatives, our employee representatives over there. It will help, and yet people were fighting against that. And you know what? A lot of what was mentioned today by, just be honest, conservative and liberal sides of the room, where we need more people, more staffing, more pay, more programs, and every single one of those is dollar signs. Now, there were other things, and I'm getting to that. But all programs, people, all of that retention, that's all dollar signs. And you know what? There's things that we can control and things that we can't control and things that we can influence. Dollar signs, honestly, we can't control. The state holds that budget. And they give us, thank you, Brevard County, again, I just want to say it again, for approving the millage, because then the Brevard County citizens decided, you know what, we can control that as a community, but this board can't control that. I heard drug issues. I'm going to mention that later, because one of the reasons why that we are the #1 expelling school district in the county is because we are one of only 2 school districts in the county that expels for drug use. And I think, even though that's not the behaviors I think that everybody's highlighting today, it is definitely involved. And I think that we have the opportunity maybe in the future to dream a little bit differently and maybe find that, because that is a huge problem. Professional development. I'm going to tell you what, I believe that everybody at this table in this community needs to give a little bit. Everybody part of this organization needs to give a little bit. We cannot decide that our side has all the answers. And I'm going to tell you, union representatives, I am kind of tired as a board member of constantly hearing the pushback on professional development. We have had a lot of fuss about how even Hurricane Makeup Day is on February 20th, it's Professional Development Day, and we fussed and fussed and said, you know what, nope, we need to use that as a Hurricane Makeup Day because, you know, our teachers need, and they need the time off, they need the planning, I totally get that. We also had a fuss about taking, you know, early release days, but listen, we only have so much time for professional development. We can't make people do professional development outside of the certain realms. We need the professional development. We have more new teachers than ever before, more new bus drivers, more new IAs before, and yet we're not giving the time. We're fighting against the time to give the professional development. And that's very frustrating. So we're going to have to give a little bit because we want to provide that professional development to them, but they have to be willing to take it. And then, yes, parental involvement in families. I heard that from the sheriff. I heard that from the unions. I heard that from, you know, different employee groups. I heard it from our community leaders. Yes, we've been talking about that for so long. Here is my frustration with that, is a lot of times the people who are in the room hearing that are the ones who are already involved. And we have to figure out, how do we take that message of parental involvement to the people who aren't in the room? And they don't really give a care about this video. They're not going to watch this meeting. How do we take the parental involvement to them? Because we just started that parental academy. I think we had better turnout last Thursday than we did the week after the hurricane, but it was still pretty low. How do we take that message to parents who honestly are overwhelmed and feel unprepared to deal with their own children? Because, you know, we talk about bus drivers and teachers can't get their kids to put their phones down. They can't. I see parents all the time who can't get their own kids to put their phone down, and they're unprepared. So, and it's easy to say, just take them, but you know what? I know a lot of parents who, they don't know how to do it. They don't have the skills. So I don't know. So all of that to say, it is a multi-pronged, I'm going to borrow your phrase that you use, Sheriff Ivy, when you talk about security, a multi-layered approach. We have to address professional development for our, especially for our new teachers who don't have those classroom management skills under their belt, because a lot of them didn't come from education backgrounds, and we're throwing them in there. God bless their souls. We've got to address community and parental involvement. We've got to address the drug issue. We you know, federal and state laws, we can't address that, but you know, that may be a part of it. We have to address all of it. And I'm really glad, another thing I'm really glad of in this conversation is because I think there was a perception that some of this was going to be, you big bad school district, you're doing everything wrong. And that's not actually what I heard. I heard, families, it's time to step up. Number one, I heard that more than anything else. So I heard that. And it's time for us to get as many resources as we can, knowing that we're limited and we can't produce staff out of thin air. But we've got to do everything we can to get these things filled, because that is a huge issue. And I don't want to be, I'm an optimist, so I hate thinking about that in a negative way, but that's not going away anytime soon. And we're not unique. Brevard is not unique in any of the problems that we've talked about today. So it's not big bad Brevard, big bad Brevard Public Schools, big bad Brevard community. This is national and international. So yes, I'm glad we're talking about this, and I hope that we can be a leader. But I think everybody needs to be ready to give a little and not assume that their way or that whatever ideas they have, that's the only way that it can be done. So I may have gone a little bit more, pardon me for sermonizing, but you opened the door, Mr. Susan. I walked through.
And that's why we're here. So thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mr. Trent.
All right, so we hear you, and I was praying for a time like this where we could, not look left, not look right, but find a topic that we agree on. So we don't repeat ourselves, in which I think we're all going to wind up saying some of the same things here, but I think it's important to get out is we hear you. And I think that was the message that was trying to get out. At least that was my perception with the sheriff and the others, is that teachers, administrators, parents, we hear you. Today, before I even forget it, and I'm terrible at names, but my AP teacher and my teacher of the year and my IA, thank you. Thank you as a parent. Thank you as a teacher. Here's my big hug to you. And then believe me, people out there are doing the same thing. To my person at, well, I got names in front of me now, Miss Samantha. Thank you so much for mentioning parent and parental involvement, and my minister lady down there that mentioned parents. We feel here on the board, this is the ultimate parent connection right here. We are parents. Jennifer Jenkins and Katie Campbell, Matt Susan, and Megan and myself. This is where we felt we could contribute and put our names in and go through quite the effort to be here. It isn't the biggest thing. I mean, the biggest thing sometimes is working 2 and 3 jobs and getting your kids to school. I'm a product of that. So, but this is something we can do, but we need help. Some of the toughest words for a human to speak is I need help. And this board needs your help, parents and community. And this will not be the last, this should be the beginning of the help. From the extreme of we need maybe parents walking some hallways. We need parents invited and feel comfortable to eating lunch with your child. We need parents to possibly sit in your child's classroom. Okay? Those were the things, those were the issues that I had to deal with growing up. My mom was not my bus driver, thank God. But there were times where the teacher would call the parent and say, can you come in this week and sit with little Johnny or Ellie or whomever in the class? And I believe, and I pray that this is the new norm here in Brevard that has been brought up at many meetings, and it was shot down immediately. That's the new day, that we're going to allow parents back into the discussion. So when we hear candidates running on a parental issue, it isn't that we're trying to tell teachers how to do their job, those teachers that were afraid that was happening, or other parents that were afraid that the teacher and the parent was going to decide on the curriculum that's being taught or how it's taught. That's left up to the professionals or the teachers in the classroom. It's not what we meant. We just need a seat at the table, and we need that. And I'm thankful for this. I'm a note taker. Pardon me to go through some of these things. I wasn't going to touch on some of them, but I feel that I have to do that. I'll start at the very beginning or the end when our board member said, unless we use actual data and facts, nothing else matters. We only use data, and I have a little bit of a math background that was compiled honestly. We also heard that we need teachers to write referrals. Well, the reason why, and unfortunately, things get watered down is we get beat down after a while. Okay, and those teachers, many of them are not writing the referrals or having the discussions. And you have to ask why, right? Because, you know, I've only, Mr. Schifrin, I've not been involved 50 years, but it's been 20, okay? 30 being a parent. So let's go back when I first started as a teacher, and I would make a phone call home. And we had to log these phone calls. And they were nice phone calls, you know, even if it was on a bad situation or an uncomfortable situation. And I would get, thank you, Mr. Trent, for calling. Thank you for doing what you're doing. I'll take care of it when so-and-so gets home. Then it went to, I don't know what to do. Do you have any suggestions? I don't know how to keep the phones out of my kids' hands or playing video games. Many times it was split homes. Well, he's with his dad, or she's with the dad 3 days a week, and they get to do whatever they want, play video games. And, you know, so that's when the earbuds and the phone, that was even before phones. So we knew the issue. Then it went to, well, what'd you do to my kid to make him behave that way? Then it went to, I dropped him off at school and that's your problem. Then it went to, we don't make those phone calls home anymore. That's what's happening. Unfortunately, that's what's happening. I can't tell you how many times that my phone's been ringing off the hook during the campaign, or even as a teacher, where they just said, my principal now has come to me and said, I have to get used to the new norm. Stop complaining that this behavior is acting because we're not doing anything. I spent some time at the ALC, not as a student, but as a teacher. And too many times the student would come back with a piece of candy and say, gotcha. You know, we've got to stop doing those kinds of things. We need help in that instance. Okay, so we need to acknowledge reality. Reality isn't in the data currently. The reality you heard around the table today, that's reality. 20 years in the classroom, that's reality. Teacher retention is an issue. Bus driver retention. We know that's an issue when they're making 2 and 3 loops and a kid is an hour and a half late to school. That's reality. And we're here to come together and not just base things on whatever we see on paper, because we know how things can get moved around. Okay. So what I'm getting at there, here's my fear with parental involvement. And not that I believe these, but this is a fear. Parents don't care. Absolutely, it's a lie. That's our fear. Okay? And why do I fear this? Well, because of the 20 years that I've dealt with calling and contacting parents. I pray that that's not the case. So it is up to us. Get some parents to get involved. That's what we need to do. And I think Ms. Campbell said, many times when we come here as a parent and we say we need to get involved, it's the parents that are here that do the involvement. Grab a neighbor. Let's have some town hall meetings maybe. I like the idea of moving around. Maybe we'll come to them. Okay, but I'll end it on this. I worked closely with the dean my last few years. I can't start to explain why the parents would even call and argue and threaten a lawsuit, even for a detention. And why my little students, because they're late 3 times in a day or 2 days, that they even have to serve a detention. The argument on that, and then it escalates from there. So when these major things are going on, all the little things as a classroom teacher gets overlooked. Those used to be the big things, just like blatant disrespect from the teacher to the teacher and to the other students. So yes, we have to take everything into consideration, but we have to have some non-negotiables. Like being able to sit in a classroom, respect your teacher, respect your fellow students. We used to hang that on our wall. Each class would come up with their own non-negotiables before learning can start. I'll end it when we talked about, well, you know, kids are behind in reading and in math. Trust me, I understand. I'm a math teacher. Okay? I have some special concerns in my class, in my home with reading right now. Okay? But why are they behind? There's lots of reasons, but I believe some of the reasons is what we're talking about here today. No learning can start unless the discipline in the classroom is handled. Very little can start. We have so few minutes as an educator already. I think there was one study, 17 minutes of class period that we actually had learning going on, after attendance, and after all the things that we have to take care of. Those minutes are crucial, and us as educators need those minutes. All I want to say is I actually appreciate it hasn't been a left or right issue, that it needs to be colorblind. But we love all children. That's why we become educators, right? And that's why we get married and we have children. We love students. We want them to be the successful adults that we're hoping they all can be. But it's going to take this to start. So I appreciate everyone coming together. Many of you here didn't endorse me, didn't support me. But I said there's going to be grounds that we can come together on this. And this has got to be a bare minimum. So I got to stop. Thank you so much.
Just so everybody understands, Mr. Trent was most recently in the classroom among everybody. So he was in the classroom as of about a month ago. So many of what you see, he's heard with and met with people locally. Thank you. Ms. Wright.
I want to thank you guys for each coming today. This to me signifies the fact that we all recognize that this is a problem. Every one of us that's sitting here is here because we care, because we want to make our classrooms a productive learning environment. We want to make our school buses a safe vehicle for our kids to be transported in. And so I'm grateful that we can come together. This opportunity doesn't exist very, very often. I think really what I walk away from is this is our student code of conduct. Just so you guys know, when somebody says to a parent, hey, our code of conduct's online, do you think a parent is going to go and read this? Realistically, I mean, this is hundreds of pages of student conduct. No parent has read that. I can guarantee you that. And I think really what we need is we need clear expectations. And I think that will produce a clear result. But if we can't clearly define to our students and to our teachers, hey, this is what we're expecting from you guys, students, this is what we're expecting from you as far as behavior goes. If it's this many pages to define it, then how are we ever going to have a clear policy where we understand? It just doesn't exist in this. It doesn't. So I'm encouraged that we can pull together on this topic and we can say, hey, give us some feedback. We want to simplify this. We want to put this policy in every parent's hands and say, here's what we're looking for from your student. Partner with us. Please come help us at the schools. We need our parents involved. I think that is something I can hear from everybody here today. Our sheriff, thank you, Sheriff Ivy. I am so appreciative to the fact that you have drawn so much attention to this, because you know what else I've heard? All over the state of Florida, everyone is going through this. This is not just Brevard County, every one of us. And you know why we're hearing that? Because that video came out. So I'm grateful that the awareness has been created over this topic. And I'm encouraged that I think we can come together and we can find solutions to this as long as we're willing to hear both sides. That's all I'm saying about that. But I appreciate you guys. Thank you. I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. First, I'd like to say thank you to each person who took time today for their own busy schedules to make this meeting a priority. As you'll see from the agenda today, our emphasis will be on ensuring that we will be embracing a community, a collective approach to this problem. For too long, the school district has been working in isolation on issues that's far-reached consequences beyond the walls of our schools. In fact, I say that our discipline policies and procedures impacts all aspects of our community here in Brevard County. And on that note, I would like to say this issue is surely not isolated to Brevard County. What we're confronted with is a societal issue. And I know that the efforts in bringing change to a substantial issue will not happen overnight. But what I do know about Brevard County is this: when the mission calls, we answer. When a problem's identified, we innovate, we explore, and we develop solutions. Today is our first step in developing those solutions. But first, it is important to hear the voices of those that are experiencing the problems on a daily basis. Because in this current state, that's exactly what's missing. The voices of those experiencing this reality day in and day out. So you can put data in front of me that says there are no issues, but those are numbers absent from human voices, and I refuse to continue to allow numbers to be the only voice in this problem. So again, thank you to those of you who have reached out, who have stepped up. Your courage and your commitment is what will be bringing positive change to the school district, and I'm greatly for each one of you here today. I think we're about to do something amazing. Let's take a break for 10 minutes. Thank you.